What happens when you break an INFJ's trust, when you really break it? This question was asked by a viewer. This question has been asked by many viewers over the years, over the months, because it's a question that probably one of the questions I'm asked the most. You know, what happens when you break an INFJ's trust? And of course, there are intersections and overlaps between this question and questions I'm asked about the conditions for the mythical INFJ door slam to happen. I've made videos about the INFJ door slam a couple of times, including a relatively recent video where I suggested that we should move toward conceptualizing the door slam in terms of a banishment. It's possible that I specifically released videos in the past about the rupture of an INFJ's trust, the destruction of it. But certainly this video is an opportunity to share with you some new lines of thinking that I have been pursuing. And I would say those lines are new, not so much in terms of how much they swerve away from the main thrust of my thinking on these fronts over the last few years, but I think they go deeper. And no doubt, part of those new avenues that have been opened up in my thinking since maybe last September or so, no doubt part of that is propelled by the fact that I started training, in analytic psychotherapy and psychoanalysis, which is all about finding out what is underneath what is apparent. Sometimes what's apparent is complicated to explain. Just because it's apparent does not mean it's simple. And yet, even when it's complex, if it's apparent, it's superficial compared to the layer that's underneath, right? And so we want to understand a bit of what's underneath this relationship to trust and trust being broken that INFJs have with others, and maybe what we can say about the door slam or banishment. What is the role in all this? What is my new line of thinking? Okay, so first of all, in order to understand what I'm going to say now, you need to keep in mind that the INFJ is the most alienated of all types. And by most alienated of all types, I mean the one who is existentially most distant and detached from the here and now of everyday reality. That's because of NISE. That's because SE is an inferior function for the INFJ. That's because NI is a dominant function for an INFJ, and it has its own world, which is not like the world of external reality. And because the extroverted function that is relatively high up in the INFJ, which is the FE function, is an intersubjective function, namely that it cannot really be activated except in the presence, real or projected, of other subjectivities, namely other people. That's not the case with a high TE user. So for example, an INTJ, although they will experience some dimension of NI alienation, will not experience it to the same degree because they use TE, okay? Now, look, I'll just reiterate this because it's absolutely key to what's gonna follow. An INFJ, existentially, primordially, relates to external reality through the intersubjectivity of the FE function, dependent on other subjectivities. Okay. What it means is that in the reality testing of INFJs and the relationship that INFJs have with the everyday world, which is a complicated relationship, which is often a severed relationship, which is often preferred, or not preferred rather, who is exposed to the INFJ, often preferring the NI world. When it goes too far in that direction, we encounter solipsism. The reality testing, the relationship to reality that the INFJ has is pervaded, right? It's pervaded with intersubjectivity, because intersubjectivity is one of the essential threads by which the INFJ is able to connect to external reality, which is why FE is such an important function for INFJs. And key in many ways to the bridging, what I call the resolution of severance, transcendence of severance, in order to trace a path towards full individuation, which in the INFJ case is spiritualization. Okay. Well, now suppose that one such intersubjective relationship is seriously damaged. Okay. So the INFJ has invested a lot in one of these intersubjective relationships. So in everyday language, in plain language, that means the INFJ has formed a friendship with somebody, flesh and blood. That's what it's meant by a strong intersubjective relationship. What it means is that the valuation that an INFJ has of the real world, of external reality outside themselves, is conditioned by those friendships at some level. And what it means then is that if one of those friendships is seriously compromised, and here we are brought back to this idea of a trust being broken. So I think the INFJ has essentially two main options. They're going to have two main options in relation to a very primal feeling, emotion, which is terror, which is existential dread, which is a sense of existential anguish. And why is the impact of trust being broken one of existential anguish? Why is it not just connected to the relationship between the INFJ and the friend or former strong acquaintance? Well, precisely because the INFJ is existentially alienated and depends for the furtherance of a link with external reality and the trust of external reality in general on the trust that the INFJ establishes with a select few others that have gone through all the different filters to establish themselves as reliable connectors. In some sense, you could see INFJs, friends of INFJs, as connectors to reality for INFJs. And so when one of those connectors breaks the INFJ's trust, turns out to be unpredictable, turns out to not be reliable, the pain and anguish that the INFJ is going to feel is going to go much beyond the friendship itself and enter the realm of existential dread, existential anguish, existential depression. And so the two options are to move beyond the friendship. This person's not reliable, this person's can't be trusted. And we know, because when we talk about trust being broken, it's taken as given that this trust has been seriously broken. You know, we're not talking about a friend who's like 10 minutes late for coffee that's planned with an INFJ. We're talking about serious breach of the trust. So either the INFJ just moves on and repair themselves, finds the strength to repair themselves and banishes the person from their, in a sense, from their holistic mindscape, because INFJs having holistic minds always need to make sure that there's consistency to that holism. And so if the person has broken their trust, they have also broken the part of the logic of their holistic mindscape, which means that if that mindscape is going to survive through it repairing itself, the person who broke the trust is eliminated, in a sense, from the purview of the INFJ. That's banishment. That's what people describe as the doorslam. The other possibility, which is actually worse, it's more maladaptive, but it's less painful in the immediate aftermath, is to, and you observe that in INFJs, is to do the exact opposite, is to seek to repair the trust and repair the friendship, sometimes even repress the feeling of having been betrayed, and weaving a narrative around the friendship that tries to gloss over the fact there was trust being broken, that there was a sense of betrayal. Because the very idea of that broken trust having exposed big gaping holes in the NI mindscape of the INFJ, and therefore in the possibility for the INFJ to keep a link open to the external world and their reality testing, their relationship to everyday reality, it can be so existentially dreadful, again, that sometimes an INFJ will prefer to repress it. Well, they will try to repair their trust or pretend there was no trust broken in the first place. So different mechanisms of defense may be invoked and utilized depending on the particular situation, the particular personality of the INFJ in question, and the nature of the friendship. It's obviously maladaptive because when you do that, first of all, you don't allow yourself to heal. You're never going to completely manage to repress the betrayal, and so there will be a return of the repressed, translating itself as anguish coming out of nowhere across the day. In fact, it's just that repressed feeling wanting to make itself known again as an alarm bell. But perhaps most importantly, the person might betray you again. And then maybe the wound will be even deeper and repair will be felt to be next to impossible. So in some sense, the door slam, which I prefer to call NI banishment, is necessary in those cases. But it can be abused. I think it is often abused by INFJs who have been really betrayed. And therefore, their banishment is exercised from then onwards, like this whole principle of once burns, twice shy. An INFJ might preemptively use it a little bit too quickly in the future, just to prevent the possibility of those gaping wounds being inflicted on their NI holistic consistency in the future. That they will make their access to their potential friendships even more restrictive out of a sense of protecting themselves. Let me know in the comments what you thought, guys. And don't forget that if you want to know a lot more about all these topics, I wrote 2 books on the INFJ, and they're really well worth looking at. The Infinite Soul is my book on the INFJ life in the modern world. Often the modern world is seen as hostile by INFJs, seen as not a welcome place for them to express themselves authentically. And yet this book argues it is the absolute key. Authenticity is the key to flourishing in the world's INFJs. Get the book below, and get also the book that preceded it, its prequel, The Ecstatic Soul, which is the deepest investigation of the INFJ mind, what it's like to be an INFJ, what it's like to think like an INFJ, to be an INFJ. This is the book, the new look at the INFJ personality. Check all the reviews as well as the reviews of The Infinite Soul, and get the book if you want to know more. It's the deepest investigation of the type in terms of how they think and are. The Ecstatic Soul. And as you can see, the 2 books go very well together. Now, don't forget, guys, that Patreon donations to my channel, your kind donations, are the lifeblood of my channel. I could not do it without you. For a relatively modest amount every month, you can access bonus videos every 2 weeks where I go in depth about a particular topic. Recently, it was a half an hour on INFJs and SE. You get access to the community. Soon we'll open up a Discord. You have access to me. It's great. So please consider it. That would be a massive help. And I'll talk to you soon, guys. Bye-bye.